Welcome in to Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. This episode is a hard episode to hear, only because I think there is so much heartache, there is so much trauma in this episode. So I just want to give a little disclaimer. If you are sensitive to traumatic stories or traumatic events, this episode, I do have to caution you. Be aware, this may trigger some emotion in you. But if you are not sensitive to that, I do recommend listen to this intently because today's guest has a powerful message and I believe this message needs to be elevated and really listened to. So without further ado, Lucas, get us going.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction. Your perspective.
Welcome in to Other People's Shoes, all the way from the other side of the pond. I love it when we get to travel to the Atlantic. One day I'll get there. One day. So help me welcome in a mindset coach. I probably need one of those, and maybe you probably need one of those today. Maybe it's your mindset coach to tell you to go check out my website, opspodcast.com. Maybe it's that business foundation strategist that's passionate about women. Well, I'm not a woman, but hopefully she's still passionate about what I'm doing that can help me get my mind in the right place with my social media at OPS Podcast Show. I mean, maybe she can help me with that too. And of course, always help me. I feel like Bobby Brown here. Help me taking the every little step that I take to fulfill my life's mission. Help me welcome in Leticia Blaquerose from the UK. Leticia, how are you?
Hey, I am amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We got up early. The coffee's not even on. I don't know what I'm drinking, but it's this water that kind of tastes a little bit like watermelon. I'm not really sure, but we got some water going in us today. How about you? I know it's like lunchtime there, right?
Yeah, it's lunchtime. Yeah.
All right. So getting into this, I gotta ask this question right at the gate, right at the onset, right as we start. I just have to know this. What style of shoe do you like to wear?
I like old school Vans. I think 90% of my shoes are Vans.
Now, some have said when they look at our logo, our show artwork, that it might look like Vans. And I always say, no, it really doesn't look like Vans. Maybe the Wish version of Vans, maybe. For those that know what the Wish website is. I haven't told this story in a while, so I feel like for you, we should tell this story just a little bit. So when I first started the show, we came up with a name, my wife and I worked together on that, and we called it Other People's Shoes because we wanted to be in your perspective, your shoes, walking where you've walked, right? And so I thought, what a better way to honor the show than to go out and get a used pair of shoes, someone else's shoes. So I jumped on eBay, the international garage store of everywhere, and I bought a used pair of Vans because it looked like our logo. And I started wearing them every Wednesday when the show comes out. And then I started realizing my feet hurt because the Vans, as you know, have no arch. And I'm 41. Brother needs some arches. And I'm not talking golden arches. I mean, sometimes I need that too, but I need an arch. And so I had to retire my Vans. So that's why they're on the wall. People always ask, well, why do you have shoes on the wall? That's weird. Well, that's why. So anyway, back to you. So Vans, that's awesome. I love your Vans. So what color are they?
I have all sorts of color. I have multiple camouflage. So I have gray camouflage, blue camouflage, beige camouflage. And I love pink. So my brand colors are pink and gray. So I have pink Vans, gray Vans. Yeah, we rock Vans. Anything color. I'm a colorful person.
Okay, so is there a pair of light blue Vans? Ooh.
Yes. The camouflage. Okay. So the light blue, the several shades of blue and white, not just plain blue.
So you talk about color brand. Years ago, I was in 6th grade, and I fell in love with this team from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which I was born in North Carolina, but I fell in love with them, and they're the University of North Carolina, the Tar Heels, where Michael Jordan played basketball, famously. And so when I started the show, like light blue's in everything I wear, as you can tell. Like I have headphones, bracelets, my watch when I'm wearing my watch is light blue. Everything, my shirt's light blue today. Everything's light blue. If you look at our stuff, I guess our brand color would be light blue. Anyway, a lot of people have teased me for years. They're like, every time I see you wearing something light blue, I'm like, it's just what I've done for years. And so I just incorporated that into the show. If we were to come out to England, what would we go and do together? My wife and I, and you and your husband, what would we do in England?
I live in Worcester, which, by the way, is the home of Worcestershire sauce. How do you say it?
I'm not even going to try because I always say it wrong, but Worcestershire?
Well, I'm in Worcester, and in England, there are channels that lead all over the place, and they have, not channels, canals, I should say. They lead all over the place. They're very, very narrow, and we take this very narrow boat and go through, and I love seeing England from the water side. I have an infinity to water growing up in Bermuda. Beautiful. You have never seen clear blue waters until you have seen the waters surrounding Bermuda. So I love water, but it's an amazing experience being on these little canal boats. And when they say they're narrow, they are like probably 3 strides across the very narrow. But the exciting part of this is you have to travel through locks. And they are like water elevators or lifts, as they say in England, but water elevators. So you open one side of the lock and it, depending if you're trying to go up or down, it either lets the water in. So you go in, you open up one side and the water flows in so the boat rises up. And then when you're at that next level, you open up the other side of the lock to carry on through. And I think it's so fun hopping on and off these narrow canal boats, traveling through these little canal networks. That's an experience you will never, ever hear outside of the UK, I don't think. Maybe in Amsterdam, but I never really saw locks in Amsterdam. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that a lot. So that's fun stuff. But I'm wondering about you, because we're in this new season. That's I have an anticipation of this season, and that's the joy of a creator, right? Is you think in your mind, okay, how is this going to go? You start structuring, you start planning, but you never really know how the conversation's going to go because you can't script. As you know, you can't script conversations, right? And so with that, I'm always wondering, how is this going to go? Because when I had this brainstorm of an idea of asking people this question, are you enough? I don't know. Has that ever been a struggle for you, really deep down inside?
You know, I struggled for 30 plus years with being enough. And I think that's part of my story as starting as a life coach and moving on to being a mindset coach is really I wanted to help others because my journey was so powerful for me. And we'll get into it, obviously. But, you know, I remember being 7 and being told a story that became my narrative for almost 30 years and impacted every aspect of my life, not just, you know, family relationships. It impacted how I showed up at work. It impacted the decisions that I made. So, yes, I think all of us struggle with, am I enough? And I think the power is in accepting that we are enough in this moment. And I think given the opportunity to share my story will be, you know, the chance to show people that no matter what you go through, it starts with a decision and deciding that, yes, despite having my ups and downs, despite having my flaws, if I believe I'm enough, I can make things happen for myself.
Well, you talk about having a story at 7 years old. I got to hear this 7-year-old story because I see a young woman sitting before me and I'm thinking, what at 7 for her, shaped her life, really radically brought her to the core, because at 7, again, you're still, in my mind, still developing as a human being, as a person. As a boy, I was playing with, Army men. Well, we didn't play with Army men. We played with Marine men because my dad's a Marine. But at 7, I still had aspirations of playing baseball professionally. I mean, I'm just taking myself to 7, but take you and us back to when you were 7. And what was that like?
Well, I was growing up in Bermuda. I mean, I'm not going to paint a sad picture for you because it wasn't sad. But I remember, I don't have a memory of my parents ever being together. And I remember having a conversation with someone in my family and asking them, why are my parents divorced? And I was told, and I remember plain as day, everything about that moment I remember. I was told, the reason why your parents are not together today is because you were born and your mother decided to pay more attention to you. And that was gut-wrenching. I didn't understand in that moment that I had no responsibility for the decisions that adults made. I believed that I tore my family apart simply by being born. And that is something that I was challenged with. It was a heavy burden to carry at 7 years old. So for me, everything that I did after that, I began questioning myself. I questioned my worthiness. I questioned whether or not I should even be here because I tore apart people that were happy. As I grew, both my parents remarried, and both my parents remarried or married people that made it known that they didn't like me, that they didn't want me in their space. So I grew up not only carrying the weight of my parents' divorce, but then I grew up feeling unwanted because they both have families. And for some reason or the other, I didn't fit into that. So here I am, someone amazing. I'm not going to take that from myself, but I was questioning, am I meant for anything if all I've done in my life is bring destruction? So it showed up for me as, constantly seeking love in all the wrong places. It showed up for me second guessing everything that I did. I had no confidence. I acted out in ways that were detrimental to me simply because I was seeking attention, simply because of this story that I was told at 7 years old. I questioned everything about my life. I questioned whether or not I was good enough for people to love me. And it took me down a very dark place, a very, very dark road for me. That's the story that changed the way I lived for a long time.
So you said it's not a sad story. Did you say that? Did I hear that correctly?
I said it. I'm not going to paint a sad picture. I like, okay. Some people start off saying, I grew up with roaches on the floor. Like, it wasn't that. You know what I mean? I had a really good childhood outside of the emotional things that were going on.
Okay. But for me, that's still kind of sad. I mean, as the observer, as the hearer, as the listener, which, I do actively listen, I do think that's still kind of sad because I just finished a great book by Louis Giglio, a dream guest of mine. So I'm like eating up everything I can of his. So one day, if it ever happens, we can have this, amazing conversation. But he's a pastor here in the States out of Atlanta. And he wrote this book called Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table. It impacted my life so much that I actually made, through Canva, I made a iPhone wallpaper. And I put the words around it, and there's a table, and there's a light blue sky, of course, because everything has to be light blue, And anyway, and so the words say, don't give the enemy a seat at your table. Great book, by the way. I'm not being paid to say that. I try to mention it when it applies, and I think it applies here. But you talk about this story that was woven into your life at a young age of 7, that you're the reason. There's the song out here in the States too, breaking up is hard to do. And it's actually relatively easy. The song lies to us. It is really easy to break up. And for somebody to weave that into you, to sew that into your life, what I hear in that is I hear the enemy, I hear evil thoughts, I hear just, how dare somebody say that to you? And so it makes me think of so many questions like, How did that affect you and your dad? You know, to know that you were never going to be a daddy's little girl. How does that affect you and your mom, that your mom chose you, but yet she still chose somebody over you because she ends up getting remarried? I mean, there's so many onion layers to that. You know, then it makes my mind almost think, well, was there suicide on the table? Was that a dish that maybe was being served at her table? So I almost want to hear about that, because I almost want to hear, as a child at 7 being told that. I now feel like I know a little bit more of your passion, because there have been people in this lane, but we'll go for you specifically. Tell me about that dark lane that you traveled on, having all of these people compile on you. You're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, writing their own make-believe narrative into your life, that fairy tale story. We talked about it in the green room that, you know, my family's been to Disney and you're a big Disney fan, but Disney's all about fairy tales. It's all about magic. It's all about make-believe. It's all about happiness. And I know, again, you said it wasn't this terrible picture like there were cockroaches crawling all over the floor and you had to rise up from this, you know, but you kind of did. Help me with that.
Okay, so, you know, it was a struggle, I think. Pre-teens, I was more, I'll say this. I describe myself as a self-contained hurricane. And I've always been like that. I've been a person that questions everything. I question everything, like make it make sense for me before I blindly follow. So I've had a voice. I've spoken my truth. That's something I've always done. I think traveling that journey with that heaviness and people constantly telling you, no, girl, you cannot be like this. Like, turn it down. That burden became heavier for me, because not only did I feel like, okay, I am the reason for my parents' divorce, I also felt like I cannot even be myself. I'm life. I have a big personality that seems to offend people. Nothing I do is enough. Nothing I do makes people happy. And I think I spent years seeking attention, years looking for people to see me, which meant that, you know, I acted out, which of course, you know, came with consequences that I couldn't handle, which then furthered that narrative. Like, you're not enough. Like, you can't even get things right because, you know, you're always being criticized. And it got to a point in my teens, like all I wanted was to be loved in a way that I didn't have to be something someone else wanted. I wanted to be loved for me with all the stuff that comes with it, right? And it's interesting. I call my stuff my thorns. It's an honor to get to know me, but I'm a lot to get to know. And if you can't navigate through my prickly thorns, then you don't deserve the right to know me, right? I've learned over the years to embrace my thorns. They are what make me unique. But my thorns, as well as all the weight that I carried, felt a lot in my teens. You know, as a teen, you're trying to navigate the world as you learn who you are. And as I was learning myself, I was being rejected. And that resulted in me not wanting to live. I remember the day that I tried to commit suicide. I was having an argument with my mother's husband. And I said, I should just kill myself. And he said, go ahead, I'll watch. And he called everybody into the kitchen, and I stood there and I took a handful of Aleve and I walked out of the house. And that was what I dealt with. People not taking me seriously. All I wanted was to be loved and to be accepted for who I was. So I ended up in the hospital having to drink charcoal, you know, getting my stomach pumped, because that was a cry for attention that was blatantly mocked and ignored.
I don't even know what to say to that. How do you even go back and associate with somebody after that?
I didn't. I've not spoken to him in any form or fashion in 25 years. And I lived in his house. I did not speak to him again after that.
How you come back from that? I was taught from a young age, too, that we should forgive others. That would be a tough forgive. That would truly be a tough forgive. But some would say maybe that was just you being over dramatic. You mentioned that you haven't forgiven him. Why not? I mean, I know it's obvious.
Because I stand on the outside and I know forgiveness is always about me. It's not about the other person. But I know hate is a very strong word. But because of what I went through in relation to his actions, I struggle to move forward. And, part of my growth, I have had other issues with other family members. My mother and I didn't speak for years. I've been able to move past that. There's a sense when it comes to forgiveness, you want to know that somebody actually has remorse about what they've done, actually cares about what they've done. My truth is, I don't believe that he even cares about the impact, the negative impact that he made on my life. And that's what I struggle with.
Well, a while back, a friend of mine who's a fellow podcaster, her name's Amy Watson. She has a very horrific story, a lot of trauma, bad parenting. I think she was at one point in time babysat by like serial killers. I mean, she has some crazy stuff. Girl's got some crazy stuff. Love her dearly. Amy, shout out to you. In Amy's episode, I shared some lyrics from a song, and I feel like I need to share them with you in this moment. The lyrics are just so powerful, so I'm going to share them with you, and then I'd love to get your response to them and how maybe it relates to you, if you're okay with that. The song is by J.J. Heller, but here's the song. It says, "I will love you for you, not for what you've done or what you will become. I will love you for you. I will give you the love that you never knew." What's your response to that?
That is so powerful. And that was like the story of my life, really, searching for that person or people to just love me for me. That's powerful. And that's beautiful. If you can find someone that literally just loves you for you, no strings attached, no hidden agendas, you're blessed.
So do you believe that there is such a person that can do that?
I do that. I love people for who they are. I am that person.
Right. I know you are that person, but I'm wondering, have you found you, if you follow me, have you found you who will do that for you? The love that you never knew? And so again, I go back to that. Have you found that person who will love you the way that you never knew? And if so, tell me about this person.
Yeah. He's my husband, and we have battled through so much in this relationship. I met him, and he had some struggles, let's say. And I think we were both wounded in a space where we both wanted an opportunity to be loved. And I think that's the beauty of our relationship. We've weathered some amazing storms together. We've grown together. And I feel safe with him. I would say it's the first time I've ever been able to let down my guard completely in a relationship because of things that I've been through in the past. I was in an abusive relationship from the age of 14. And that shaped, even more so, parents, that shaped how I viewed the world. Because I thought my first husband was the person that was going to love me like I had never been loved before. And he used my desire for that to control me in ways for years. I was 14 when I met him, and he was 28. And I thought I had hit the jackpot. Here I have this man that's willing to take care of me financially. He was taking care of me sexually at 14. And I, felt like finally I had what I needed. Now that I'm, healed and reflect back, I realized, I was wounded. I was a wounded animal in the wild looking for shelter. And this apex predator hunted me down and took full advantage of me. Because of the situation I was in it was almost immediately after my suicide attempt, I met him. So I was wounded. I was weak. I was vulnerable. And this man swooped in, knight in shining armor. I'll give you everything that you never had. And I fell for it. And with that came beatings, chokings, rapes, torture for years. But because I was in that space where I was like, I'm not even enough to keep my parents happy. I ruined the only thing that meant something to me. Perhaps I deserve this. And I sat in it for years, and I hid from the world, because when I first started going with him, everybody was like, what are you doing? This man does not have good intentions. But these are the same people who have made me feel like I don't belong. So why would I listen to them? Here is he's showing me that he loves me, where my family has showed me that I'm an inconvenience. Why would I listen? I spent so much time justifying my relationship, rationalizing my relationship, trying to paint a pretty picture for people. Like, no, he really does have good intentions. That he choked me for the first time. Who am I going to go tell? I can't tell my mother. He could get locked up. I mean, he shouldn't. It was an inappropriate relationship from the very jump. You know, who am I going to tell? Who's going to believe me? Who's going to save me? I got choked for the first time, 14 or 15. And I had enough sense to leave. I packed up my stuff that was in his place and I left. And I went back home to my mama's. And yes, I was 14, but I spent most of my time there. I was out of the way, out of sight, out of mind. I wasn't causing trouble in my household, so it wasn't a big issue. But I packed up my stuff in a trash bag and I left because I knew that I was better than that. I got back home. I'm now back at my mama's house. You know, the atmosphere was not great. I was bitter. I was full of anger. I was full of blame at that age. So I can imagine that I was a handful. No, I was a handful. I remember getting into an argument with my mama one day. It was something, I think it was a speaker. I left the house. And 2 days later, I got a registered letter. And I was like, what is this? I thought it was something from my father, who at the time I wasn't speaking to either. And I remember going to the post office and picking up this registered letter and opening it, telling me that I was no longer allowed on my mother's property. And if I came to her property, I would be arrested. So at 16, I might have been 17, I don't know. 16, 17, I had absolutely nowhere to go. My mother's family would not take me in. I didn't have a great relationship with my father's family because I wasn't speaking to them. I had nowhere to go. And all of a sudden, this knight in shining armor that choked me seemed like the only option that I had to keep a roof over my head and food in my stomach. So I went back. And I will say, because of that decision, I spent years questioning whether or not I knew what was right for me. We ended up getting married. The abuse never stopped. I know there were times where I had to call the police, where he's barricaded the house, he's taken my cell phones, pulled the landlines out of the wall so that I had no outside contact. But every time I went back, because I had nothing else. This man had created this vacuum for me, and he controlled what I did and who I saw. And it was all on the premise that he used the fact that I knew that I was the reason my parents were not together as a way to control me. He always used to tell me, your parents don't even love you. They didn't even really want you. So you owe me. And I lived like that for years, getting up and going to work. And funny enough, I worked in law enforcement. I had a job in law enforcement, and I was scared to tell anybody because, I grew up in Bermuda. Bermuda's a small community, 65,000 people. So if something happens to you, people are gonna know. And I knew that if I called the police while I worked at law enforcement, everybody that I worked with would know my business. So I hid and I put on a smile and drank my troubles away while I was out of the house. That led to me being miserable, even more so. Times where I literally wanted to check myself into a mental institute so that I had peace, so that I had rest because I used to get tortured at night. He used to pour water in my ears, soak me in alcohol, and threaten to set me on fire, and I experienced that so long that it broke me down to my psyche. And then one night, Neil, he stabbed me. And what is interesting about that night, I had a friend who was in a relationship with an addict, and she called me for advice. I mean, who was I to give anybody relationship advice? But of course, she didn't know what I was going through. And I remember picking up a book by Iyanla Vanzant, Just for Today. And I opened it randomly, and that page was talking about how people are in our life for a reason and a season. And the reason why we struggle in relationships and in dynamics is because we often try to keep people in our lives that do not belong there. And I remember reading that passage to her and saying, this is why you need to walk away. But in myself, feeling like a hypocrite because I couldn't walk away. And that night, he came home drunk out of his mind. He could not find something that was my fault. All I can hear was reason and season. We're miserable because we're holding people in our lives that don't belong there. And that day, I was like, I'm tired. I'm tired of this. I don't need to be dealing with this. And the minute I stood up for myself, the minute he saw that switch in me, I became a threat. He picked up a knife. He chased me around that house. And we were not living alone. We were living in someone else's house. And I was trying my hardest to be quiet because I didn't want his friend to come out and witness this. I managed to get away from him, and I called my mother, and I was like, listen, I need you to come pick me up. I need you to come get me. If you don't get me, I'm really, really scared I'm not going to make it through the night. And I hung up the phone. In that moment, he ripped out the phone out of the wall, and he stabbed me. He tried to barricade me in his room, in the room that we were staying in. And I remember his friend banging on the door. There was another door that was blocked by, this Tupperware containers that stand up pretty tall. It was blocked by that, and his friend managed to burst in the room where the Tupperware containers, and I was able to squeeze out. I think if his friend had not done that, I am certain that I would have been seriously, seriously injured, or I would have been dead. I managed to get out of the house. I called my mother again. I should have called the police, hindsight, but I called my mother again. I was like, you need to come get me. My clothes were ripped off of me. I had blood all over me. And the only thing that I wanted to do was go back and get my Louis Vuitton purses. So crazy, right? Because that's what he used to give me as like my sorry gift. So like I'm in my 20s, early 20s with like tens of $1,000s worth of Louis Vuitton bags. And I thought that meant something. That made me something. So like I was like, I've got to go back and get my purses, And I remember going back in the house, and he was just sitting there like nothing had happened, still with my blood all over his shirt. And as I was trying to take stuff, like his friend had calmed him down, and as I was trying to take stuff out of the house and pack my mom's car, he got up and started pulling the stuff out because I was trying to hide that I was taking the Louis Vuitton bags. And he figured it out, came out, took the purses out of the car. I realized in that moment, like, is your life worth this? You're now putting your mother at risk because he's crazy, So we laughed. And I remember leaving, Neil, and thinking, okay, I'm with my mother. Everything's going to be okay. And I got to my mother's house. And she said, well, where are you going to live? What are you going to do? You can't stay here. I left there. I went to the police station, and I was housed in a domestic violence home where I stayed for 3 months until I was able to get myself on my feet and get an apartment for myself. And my whole view of relationships were based on the two most important ones that I had today. The one with my husband that was abusive, and the one with my parents where I felt like I wasn't worth anything. I was a disaster to them. So after leaving, my life was a spiral. I had to learn how to love myself. I had to learn how to forgive myself. I had to learn how to trust myself all over again. So all back to that initial question. Have I found someone that loves me for me? Yes. But it came after I could love me for me.
Wow. I don't even know how to respond to all of that, except just wow. I don't even feel like that's a proper response. You just wanted somebody to hug you. You just wanted somebody to sit you down, you know, have a cup of tea with you. I imagine, sorry, that's an England stereotype. Maybe it's a cup of coffee. And just really look into your eyes and just say, listen, I do love you for you. Wow. I'm so sorry that happened to you. From a human being to a human being. I'm sorry that you had to walk that road. As you retell that story, there is an element of you're not sad about it. Of course, maybe enough time has passed. You've been able to process through that and through coaching and through mindset, you know, training. I'm sure you've been able to process through that trauma. But in that, I still hear this 7-year-old little girl telling me this story, not the woman sitting before me. I hear this 7-year-old little girl kind of asking me as Neil, one day my prince will come, Neil. One day I will leave. Your biological mother was not your stepmother, but for the Disney analogy, you know, one day I'll leave my stepmother's house. One day my prince will come in the carriage. One day my prince will come and he'll take me to the faraway castle and we'll live happily ever after. It'll be perfect. Now, I know you're a mom. How have you helped your daughters not fall into the same trap that you have fallen into?
My babies are very young, Neil. But what is important for me is letting them know that they are loved. I have a set of affirmations that I share with my daughters 4 times a day. You are beautiful. You are loved. You are special. You have purpose and you're here to change the world. And I tell them that every day. I shower my children with love. And my plan is to be open and honest with them about my journey because I think it's important. Not to burden them with anything, but to help them see that no matter what you're going through in life, no matter what you've been through in life, your belief in yourself is what is most important. The beliefs that you hold about yourself, the narratives that you speak to yourself is what is important. So those affirmations have been said to them before they could even talk, because it's important for me that they know that they are enough and no outside variables will ever change that.
That's awesome that you have done that. I don't know if are you a fan of Apple products by any way? Has Apple made it across I ask a little bit laughingly, but
yes, I don't like iPhones, but I like everything else.
Okay. All right. iPhones are amazing, by the way. Shout out to iPhones. Love them. Number of months back, maybe almost even a year now, I got AirPod Pros, maybe bragging a little bit that I have AirPod Pros. But what's so fascinating about these AirPod Pros is they have this noise canceling device that I've never seen on any other technology product. You put them in your ear, you like hold down the sides of them, and you can literally hear the sound almost like a vacuum sucking out of the room. It's like whoop, it almost makes this sound as the sound goes away from your ears. Now, I'm not the world's greatest singer, just saying. Like I'm not packing out Wembley Stadium. Not doing that. But when I have the AirPods in, amazingly, I think I sing better. But I used to wear them on runs, and I can't hear cars around me. I can't hear people yelling at me. They're a noise blocking device for sure. So what I'm wondering about, do you think there has been great value in your life in finding that noise canceling device? And why has that been so important to you?
Absolutely. One of the things that I used to sit in was replaying every element of a scene or an experience and almost re-victimizing myself as I relived it. And I realized that constantly revisiting the events that have made me feel makes me feel even more But also, as I've, evolved, as I've healed, as I've trained to be a coach, I also realize now that sitting in those moments takes me back to being a victim. And when I'm a victim, I'm not in control. I am literally gifting my power away to someone else. And my whole purpose now is to walk with intention, to take control of my life so that the experiences that I create moving forward don't have me feeling like, ugh. Or if they do, having the tools to navigate through that so that I don't have to sit there and revisit it. So learning how to let go of that. That is part of my past. I can sit here and tell you about it, but it doesn't take me back to that, that Disney thing where I'm like going back in time, reliving this experience. I don't do it anymore. I am grateful. And when I say this, people don't truly always understand when I say this, but I am grateful for every single moment, every single moment, every single double moment, because the woman I am today is a direct result of that. And I'm so proud of the growth that I have experienced. I am so proud of the distance that I have traveled, the love that I have gathered along the way for myself. And, I remember being in high school and they tell you about, Maslow's hierarchy. And I never truly understood it. Understanding that I went through a lot. There were times I didn't have a roof over my head. There's times that I didn't have the love that I wanted. There was times where I didn't have the security that I needed. But all of that was like a stepping stone for me finding my purpose. My story has a purpose, and me being able to silence the ugliness of it, the negative emotions attached to it, has given me the power to share it with someone who truly needs it. And that's what self-actualization is, mastering these steps so that you're in a position to make an impact. And I'm making an impact now. So every step along the way, as ugly as they were, I am incredibly grateful for, because the impact I'm making by not sitting in victimhood is helping other women, which is so, so important to me.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. As long as I do the show, we'll continue to ask this question, but we always ask for a quote or a phrase or, something that really resonates with you and you delivered for sure. And I love it so much. I feel like we need to get this in because it's so relevant to what you're talking about. It says, walk as every step you take is about to create an avalanche. You are here to change the world. Don't forget. So yes. I know they're your words. That's not somebody famous. Well, I mean, sort of famous.
Not yet.
Going to be famous one day, but not certified, we'll say, on the gram. When I first read that, I thought, man, who said that? That is so profound. And I asked you in the green room and you're like, I said that. And so I was like, that is really good. It really made me think back to the steps I've taken, the places that I've been. And one little quote did that. So I just want to let you know, you got my mind thinking of the steps and the journey, and am I creating that avalanche, for my own little sphere that I'm in? You did that without even knowing that.
Oh, that's amazing. It makes me feel good. I got the feels, the happy feels.
Well, good. So when I ask you this question, I'm guessing you've heard of Wembley Stadium being in that England area, right? Of course, right? Everybody's heard of Wembley Stadium. By the way, without Googling it, no Googling, do you know the seating capacity of Wembley Stadium? Like how many people they can get inside?
I don't know, maybe 120,000.
Wow, you're way over.
Really?
Way over. So Google puts it at 90,000. So I'm going to say something that I don't think I've ever said, but here we go. Imagine you're on the football field, and I'm not talking American football. I'm talking that. I think what you guys call football. It's not really football.
I call it soccer. I like NFL. I'm an NFL fan, so I call it soccer.
Good. We'll send you the Jaguars. You can have them. You have a microphone in your hand. I've created this amazing event for you. You got women from all walks of life. We'll say from the age of, we'll make it 10. 7 seems a little young, but we'll make it 10 to 65. What would you say to those women in that moment? And maybe we have some men in there too, because I think men struggle with mindset too. I think men struggle with, who will love them for them, right? What would you say in that moment to that crowd at Wembley Stadium? Here's your moment.
Your power comes when you make a decision to ensure that your thoughts are aligned with success. You can create any vision of the future, and it's up to you to choose one that truly serves you.
I think that's powerful. But the question I always have to follow it with is, do you think anyone would hear it, listen, and apply it?
I think the people that will hear it, listen, and apply it are the ones who are tired of the cycle that they see in their lives and are ready to do something about it.
Last question before we play our game. Where does the black rose come from?
I have always been obsessed with black. And then I was thinking about the name of my company. I wanted it to represent me. So I told you, I've always called my flaws thorns. And I wanted to kind of tie that into it. Black roses to most people are morbid. And that is what I wanted. The black rose represents the death of thoughts and habits that do not serve us. Working with Black Rose Coaching is the process of giving birth to something new after we've mourned the death of the things that have held us back that no longer serve us. So Black Rose to me is representation of a new birth, a new beginning, and a new opportunity to take control of your life.
I was wondering about the fact that you use the black rose as a way to say the death of the old you, the beginning of the new you.
Yeah.
I know you're a mom. Are you kind of like highly competitive? Are you a competitive person? Would you categorize yourself as that? I just wondered as we go into this game time, like how competitive really are you?
I can be competitive.
All right, so don't worry, it's not trivia. Everyone always freaks out like, oh no, he's going to ask me like trivia questions. I'm not really good at trivia. I'm really bad at geography. No, it's this game we like to call Senseless. It's the way we end our show, every show. And so before we get to Senseless, though, I do want to just say thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. You've just been fantastic. Go have some lunch on me today and just maybe process through this conversation as crazy as it's been. But if somebody is hearing you and they want to reach out and they want to know more about Black Rose and maybe how you can help them get the mindset that you have and the mindset that you've, obviously established and gotten after, how can someone do that?
They can contact me on social media. On Facebook, I am Leticia at Black Rose Coaching, and Black is spelled Blaque. It's actually my nickname, Black Rose Coaching, and I am also Black Rose Coaching on Instagram. I love starting new conversations, so reach out to me, say hello, and yeah, that's how you can contact me.
Fantastic. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. We do appreciate that. Okay, so here we go. Here's our game called Senseless. Now, I'm a little nervous because I don't know what they taught in Bermuda. I don't know what they taught in, I don't know what they're teaching your girls in school over there, but help me with this. This is part of our game. But how many senses do we truly have? Do you know?
I want to say 7. And I think the last 2 are spiritual based senses.
All right. So name the 7. Can you name them? I'm putting you on the spot here big time. All right. So here we go. So name the 7. We got the easy ones. Let's get the first 5 out of the way. That are the
touch, hearing, sight, smell, taste.
All right, we got the first 5. All right, now what are the other 2?
I think we have an instinctual, like instinct, that is a sense that, intuition is the easiest way to say it. Intuition. And the 7th one, I think, is like a spiritual connection to a higher power.
You're the first one that's ever said 7, so I really had to break that down. So I know of the typical 5, so that's good. So here we go. So Senseless is this fun game we like to just kind of end the show with. I don't even know what teams you have. I mean, we could send you the Jaguars. It's fine. My friend Amy Watson, again, would probably be mad because she's a big Jaguars fan. But this is the North Carolina Cup, and inside is a die. So there you go. There's proof of the die. So I'm going to roll for you. See what number you get. Here we go. Oh, I was really hoping you were going to get this number. I really was like praying that you would get this number. And that is not a 9. You got a number 6. I was really like hoping you were going to get this number. I love it when that happens. So here we go. So you get to have dinner or a meal with one person. Don't bring other people. You can't bring your husband. Can't bring the kids. You get one person.
Maya Angelou.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of obvious for me, but why her?
There is power in the words that she's written. And Still I Rise has a very, very huge space in my heart. I would love an opportunity to just break bread with her and just hear her brilliance in person.
What would be your number one question you'd ask her?
With all that you've been through, what was your biggest blessing in the lessons that you learned?
Wow. Sounds like somebody needs to be a podcast host. Just saying. That's a great podcast question.
You know what? It has crossed my mind. Can I just say, actually, I had a fear of visibility. And I am grateful for this opportunity because I challenged myself last week to be on 50 podcasts. And you are, outside of the ones that I've already done, number one on that path towards my goal. So, and really at the end of that was a challenge for myself. Okay, after you've done these 50 podcasts, you can start your own. So it's on the horizon, Neil.
Well, I would add this as hopefully we can use this word now as a friend. If you need help along the way, don't be afraid to reach out. I just want to give you one final thought.
Belief in yourself is paramount. No matter what you've been through, that does not have to continue to be a narrative. Every day gives you an opportunity to write your future. So make the most of it.
Absolutely. I think that's powerful. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving up your moments today away from your kids and your family and everything like that. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. This has been an amazing experience.
Well, I appreciate that too. So guys and gals alike, as we wrap up today, I'm just wondering about your mindset. I'm wondering about your Black Rose moment. I remember one time, small story, in high school, somebody actually gave a girl a black rose as a way to break up with them. True story. Like that really happened. And I remember watching her face. And I remember she tried to, of course, play it cool because she was probably one of the cool girls, you know. But I wonder deep down where she is now. I would love to go back to that moment and ask her, what did that feel like? What did that experience feel like? And I'm wondering about even our guest today. I think she taught us a valuable lesson if we really heard it. And that lesson to me, at least for me, is I do need to put some things, some wounds from the past behind. As silly as it sounds, maybe I need to go and have a funeral for them. Maybe I need to just go there, mourn it, move on from it, and start new. That to me is why I've always loved spring. I know it sounds weird because we're in the fall right now, but hey, spring is on the way. And maybe that's my encouragement to you today is no matter where you are, no matter where you're sitting, no matter where you're listening, if you're in your car, if you're at the gym, if you're on that run that we all need to be more on, my hands up on that. I just want to remind you, and I think, again, I think she did a fantastic job reminding us that spring is coming. We're going to get through the winter, but spring is on the horizon. And let that spring you into something amazing today. So let that be of an encouragement to you as we wrap up today. And I just that question, maybe remind yourself of that today. Remind yourself that those wounds are dead. You can mourn them, but you don't get to revisit them because spring, again, is on the way. So I just want to remind you of that. And of course, remind you of this. Remember, do not ever forget this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank you so much for listening and stay tuned till next week when we again walk in other people's shoes.